really pleased to have Emma Jane Turner here with me from Young Enterprise and Young Money. So Emma, I just wondered before we started chatting about all things money, if you want to just introduce what your job role is and who you work for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a senior program manager at Young Enterprise and Young Money, and we are a education charity, and we work with educators and children and young people around enterprise education and financial capability education as well. And so my team heads up all of our financial education programs, essentially.
Amazing. I'm so glad to have found you and to ask you our questions, because I think there's a real thirst, for that financial education. I think all young people feel that, and it's great to know that you're out there. So I wondered if you'd be willing to just kind of go right back to basics and explain why it is important that young people have a bank account and the difference between, say, a current account and then a savings account.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the initial question of why is it important to have a bank account is it's obviously a really safe place to keep your money. We all know these days, if we're working with cash, how easy it is for things to fall out of pockets and lose wallets and purses. So from a really basic point of view, it's a safe place to keep your money. As we move into a more cashless kind of society in the way we pay for things, obviously a bank account allows you to have things like a debit card, which allows you to pay for things electronically and not needing cash. And it can also be a great way to keep track of how much money you have and keep track of your spending and your saving, which I suppose leads on to the next question is what are the difference between a current account and a savings account, which are the two main accounts that young people will hear about and have access to. So you can think of your current account as being like your day-to-day, everyday account. So it's where your money comes into, it's where most of your money comes out of, and that's the one that's usually attached to your debit card. So when you're spending from your debit card, you're spending that money out of your current account. You usually don't earn any interest on money in current accounts. So it just sits there. How much you've got is how much you've got. Whereas if you've got a savings account, these are accounts specifically for saving money. You usually earn interest on the amount that's in there. That interest depends on what kind of account it is, but you will normally earn some. They're not usually attached to a debit card. You can't generally spend from your savings account in store or online. And there can sometimes be restrictions on how and when you access the money. So for example, you may get a better rate of interest if you deposit money every month into that account and you don't make any withdrawals. Or the bank might require you to give them 5 days notice that you want to take some money out, something like that. So there's generally some restriction on how you access that money. But the key difference from a day-to-day perspective is when you spend from your debit card, it comes from your current account, not from your savings account.
Yeah, and I guess it's there's a strength in having the two accounts because you use them for such different things, and it's good to know that the money you're saving is not going to get eaten up by any debit card spendings without you wanting it to be.
Exactly. We all have great intentions of being able to keep money in our accounts and not spend it, but sometimes it's just easier if it's not there.
So you mentioned debit cards there, but I think that a lot of young people might use the term of a debit card and a credit card quite interchangeably. And I think a lot of people may not realise that they are in fact very different. Would you be able to outline what that main difference is that people should be really mindful of?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. When you look at a debit card and a credit card, often they look exactly the same as well, which doesn't help. But the key difference between a debit card and a credit card is that when you use your debit card, you're spending your own money from your current account. When you use a credit card, you are borrowing money from the bank or from the organization that has issued the card. And when you borrow that money, you do need to repay it. That's the key difference. It's credit cards are borrowing money, debit cards are spending your own money. Obviously, when you borrow money, if you don't repay it in time, or you don't repay all of it, then you're charged interest on top of what you've borrowed, and you need to repay that in addition to what you've borrowed. So that would be the key difference there.
Yeah. And am I right that only over 18s would be offered a credit card?
Yes, yeah, you can't get a credit card.
So some young people may get their debit card with their young person's a current account, which is great. And then they probably just need to be aware that once they turn 18, they might start getting letters or offers about a debit card. And it's just to really not jump on that straight away without having a good think and maybe talk to somebody about it first.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be able to trust yourself and whether or not you're going to be able to use a credit card without getting into bad debt. They can be a great way to manage your spending a little bit. Also, some of them offer some good I suppose offers or perks or discounts and stuff like that, but it is something to be really careful about, and definitely ask for advice and guidance if you're not sure, and know that you can always say no to a credit card even if you are offered them. But it's just something to make sure you're confident in the way you manage your money before you take on a credit.
Just moving on from being confident about how we spend, I also wanted to ask some questions about earning as well, because a lot of people, when they get their first salary paying job, they might be quite new to the world of earning, and there's a few taxes that we sometimes have to pay. If you could explain what income tax is and when and how it is paid.
At a really simple level, income tax is a tax that people pay to the government on the money that they earn. So the government then uses that money for public services, essentially, and those are things like hospitals and schools. So how much you pay will depend on how much you earn, and actually where in the UK you live, because the tax rates are different across some of the UK nations as well. So you only have to start paying income tax once you earn over a certain amount each year. And currently in England, that amount is just over about £12,500. Over that point, you start to pay it, and it changes. The amount that you pay changes based on how much you earn. For most people who are working and who are employed, their income tax will be paid straight out of their salary by their employer every month. So it doesn't come into your account and then go out again. It's kind of automatically deducted. For some others, it's paid differently if you're self-employed, etc. But for most people, that's how it happens.
Another term that often get questioned is national insurance. Could you just explain that, and also what the national insurance number is that young people get when they turn 16, I think it is?
National insurance is similar to income tax, but it pays for slightly different things. So while we said that income tax covers things like your public services, your national insurance contributions basically help pay for things you might become entitled to in the future, and that might be, statutory parental leave or unemployment benefits if you find yourself without a job. So again, there is a threshold for having to pay national insurance, but it is lower than the income tax threshold. So you may start paying national insurance before you have to start paying income tax. I think at the moment it's around about £9,500 a year. You'll see it on your payslip coming out every month in exactly the same way as income tax does. You get your national insurance number at 16, as you said. It usually comes in a letter. And that's the same number that you have for your whole life. The number doesn't change. And it's important to know it because you'll often be asked for it. And it might be for things like when you're applying for jobs, when you're setting up a bank account, when you apply for student finance, if you decide to go to university, or any other benefits, they will always ask for your national insurance number. So it's definitely an important thing to keep on hand.
Yes, definitely. That's really helpful. Thank you. It's great to just talk through the mechanics of that. There are a lot of numbers people need to be aware of when they start banking and managing money, such as their PIN number, but also the account number and sort code, and also the long 16-digit number on a debit card. So I just wondered if you'd be willing to explain some of these numbers, especially the ones that you should never share with somebody else. And then leading on from that, what you should do if you lose your debit card or it's stolen.
So yeah, your key things are your account number and your sort code basically tells you where your bank account is held. So that's what that information is. And there's very few circumstances in which you would be providing those details to somebody in order for you to pay them. So obviously, if you have someone paying you, then you give them your account details, and they can use that number to pay you. The only real time you should be providing your bank account details to someone who you need to pay is when you're setting up what's called a direct debit. And that might be for something like a gym membership. If you're paying for something online or on the phone, then you're mainly using your 16-digit card number. So that's the card number on the front of your debit or your credit card, because they both have a 16-digit one. And often you'll also be asked for the expiry date and what is known as a CVV number normally, which may be 3 or 4 digits, usually on the back of the card. But you should only ever be entering these details or providing them to people that you trust, particularly on websites. It should be, you should see the little lock symbol up in the top left-hand corner. It should have a HTTPS to show it's a secure site. These are not details that you would normally give out. Certainly don't post them anywhere, because once somebody has those numbers, they can make a payment from your card in order to do that. So just be careful with who you provide those details to. In terms of your PIN number, never. There is absolutely no circumstances in which you should need to provide that to anybody. If anybody asks for it, do not give it to them, do not write it down. And if you're worried that someone knows it, then go and change it. And you can usually either do that on a online banking app or via the website with your bank, or just by going into branch as well. So certainly not something you should ever tell anyone. If you do lose your card, a lot of online banking apps will allow you to freeze the card immediately, which is quite handy if you think that you may have just lost it down the back of the sofa or something, and then once you've found it, you can unfreeze it, or you can then cancel it. If you don't have that option, just ring your bank and they can freeze it and cancel it for you. But as soon as you realise that you've lost it or misplaced it, then make sure you do either freeze or cancel it, because that will stop anyone being able to use it if they find it.
Drawing the conversation to an end, and you've had some amazing advice already, but I just wondered if you had any top tips for young people who are just starting out managing their own money independently.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the key thing to work out, and you've probably heard these words before, but is to work out your budget, which is essentially how much money you have coming in, how much money needs to go out, and what you have left over. Then you need to be able to understand what things you have to pay for. These are the things you absolutely need. If you're starting to leave home for university or to start work or something, that may be something like your rent or electricity payments. And then there's the things that you simply want but could do without. And we like to define those as your needs and your wants, and it's important to understand those as part of your budget. Now, when you're setting a budget, there's so many apps and websites that can help you out, but also sometimes you can just do it really simply, pen and paper, write it down, work it out, find a way that works for you. I would also recommend you try and get into a saving habit, even if it's literally just £5 a month, something that is a habit that you're constantly building up, so that you have that habit, but also you have that little pot of money to come back to if you need it, if you get your budget slightly wrong one month or something. And then again, just be realistic about what you can afford. It takes a bit of time to work through. You won't get it necessarily right the first time you do it. Review your budget every few months, have a look at it. Is it working? Are you able to cover your expenses? Aren't you? And then just ask for help and advice if you need it. Everybody has to manage their own money, so everybody's got some great ideas about how to do it, and there's no harm in asking someone you trust about how they would do it in your situation.
You've been such a great person to talk to about this. It's been a real education for me as well. I just wanted to really give you a chance to explain maybe a bit more about Young Money and Young Enterprise, because it sounds like a great resource that young people should know more about. So yeah, any kind of explanation on how we can tap into that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said at the beginning, we're an education charity. We work with educators and young people around financial capability. We use the brand of Young Money, and primarily we work with educators. So we're talking to your teachers and your parents and scout leaders and other people that might be teaching young people about money. So if you are a young person and your teachers aren't currently doing anything about financial education, feel free to tell them about us and direct them towards us, and they can come and have a look at what we do. But for young people particularly, we have a couple of great resources. We have a textbook, and I know that doesn't sound that exciting, but it is. It's called Your Money Matters. It's available for free download from our website. And that just goes through all of these things that we talked about today. It outlines income tax and how to read a pay slip and ways to save, things you should know about security and fraud and risk and stuff like that. So it's a great resource that obviously can be used in the classroom, but young people can access directly as well. We also have a brand new e-learning course, which is linked to the textbook called My Money Matters, and it's available through our learning zone. Again, you do need your school or teacher to provide you access with it, but if you're interested, then do tell them about it and see if they can give you access to that as well.
Brilliant. So there's sort of two routes to go. They can look up your website independently for the resource, but also talk to if they're in school, talk to their teachers and staff and get access that way. Well, that's really brilliant to hear. It's great to know that there's some really good, impartial, trustworthy advice out there when it comes to managing money. I'm sure this is going to have been really helpful for people listening. So just wanted to say thanks so much for joining me.
No, thank you for having me.
We really hope you found this interview with Emma Jane from Young Money and Young Enterprise really useful. If you would like to check out some of the resources that were mentioned, you can head to their website, which is www.young-enterprise.org.uk.